Ideally, business and creative are supposed to work together in Hollywood. The producers represent the business, and the writer-director represents the creative, with some overlap, again, in an ideal situation. But with Annihilation, we really have a versus situation, and let me explain. So, Alex Garland, the writer-director of this movie, who has earned some prestige at this point, screens his movie for the man who paid for it, executive producer David Ellison, and also the company that will distribute it, Paramount. And they say, "We've got some notes, Alex." And Alex says, "You ain't touching it." And I guess his management team did a good job giving him final cut on the film. Or did they? You'll have to decide down below, especially after you see how things have turned out. So since they couldn't get him to change the movie creatively, they decided to take a flyer on it and shunt it to Netflix outside of the United States and China, where it will debut 17 days after its United States release. Now, when I saw the trailer, I was on Alex Garland's side, but having seen the movie, I'm on David Ellison and Paramount's side. I think this movie totally belongs on Netflix, but in a good way. Allow me to explain. I think Paramount and David Ellison were like, "Help us help you, Alex," because you basically just wanted to make a Black Mirror episode, and not even the best of the season. You know, we're talking like second or third best of the season, but I still think worth seeing at some point, most likely on a streaming service. Okay, so Natalie Portman's character describes being in the Shimmer as being in a dream, and that's also how I would describe this movie itself. Stunning, mesmerizing, memorable, but incomplete, with ultimately no deeper goal but to exist. In this case, is a pretty standard sci-fi movie, but one that's been through the Shimmer. Okay, once you see this movie, I think you'll totally understand where Alex Garland is coming from. I mean, you have to experience it and then step back from it and be like, "Why'd you do that?" And you'll understand what I mean by taking a standard sci-fi movie and putting it through the Shimmer, this prism, changing it. And that's actually pretty neat from a craftsmanship perspective, right? Like a sci-fi piece of modern art. But you don't look at modern art for like almost 2 hours, right? You go, "Ah, interesting, and then you move on. And I think in some ways, a lot of ways, that's how I would also describe Annihilation. Because from an entertainment perspective, which is what movies are supposed to largely be, that's, you know, what the business side is supposed to remind you of, I think this movie ultimately falls way short. So basically, again, what you have here is a stereotypical sci-fi movie, but changed. Okay, so I'm going to go through this without spoilers, because there are some pretty cool twists in the movie that I didn't see coming. It's very hard to surprise me in a movie, because I've seen so many movies, right? They always borrow from each other, and so you learn to see the signs, etc., and there's only so many twists out there, but Alex Garland found some cool new ones. Well, they're kind of new, but I didn't see them coming, so I was very happy about that. All right, so anyway, the first thing is like we're putting together a team, right? We've seen that so many times before, and it consists of the standard stereotypes for a movie like this. But here's the twist. Here's putting it through the Shimmer. They're all women. Now, the movie doesn't do a particularly good job explaining why they are all women. I mean, there's one line where they're like, the teams that have gone in so far are mostly male. And you're like, well, if they're not all male, why would you go all female? And then it's made even weirder by the fact that at the beginning of the movie, Portman's class is almost entirely made up of female students. Like, until a guy showed up like in the background out of focus, I was like, is this an all-female college? And then when she was walking around the college for just like a short amount of time, it seemed in the background that everybody was a woman. So again, dreamlike, you know? But I wouldn't have done that because I think I don't know if this movie is about women working together. I think it's inverting the stereotypical all-male team simply by making them women. And that was cool, though. I did like that because nobody here is playing a wife, daughter, mother, girlfriend, or sister. I mean, they are those things, or a couple of those things, but that's just a part of them, like with male characters. Each woman is a person first. Well, she's a member of that stereotypical group, and they do such a good job, the actresses. I was so impressed. But also, this was what was really interesting to me. There is that undefinable feminine quality to them as well. Like, they were very much still women, and that made them stronger and unique. But it didn't take away from them being like real people. I loved their reactions. I loved their jokes. I loved their insecurities. I thought they were just incredibly complex. In fact, I would go so far as to say that this might be the best depiction of female characters in a movie that I've ever seen. It was very exciting. And worth noting that as we get a little militant these days, it was written and directed by a man. So everybody is welcome to make better roles for everyone. Okay, so next, the Earth is being morphed into something alien. Seen it, but here, instead of something bloody and metal like they usually do, it's delicate and colorful. One character describes it like a wedding, which I thought was an apt description. And it also has like a feminine quality to it, which I thought was really cool. But it's still terrifying, right? To Garland and the production design team's credit, you never feel like you can let your guard down. And then there's an ending, a typical sci-fi ending. But here, no twist, which was what made it disappointing. And in fact, a lot of the movie was disappointing because it not only uses dream logic, whereas it's incomplete. And I know some of you, I'm sure, are like, I love incomplete dream logic. It's not satisfying, particularly without a good payoff. And also the pacing. So it's not just the lack of logic, but the pacing, which I believe was one of the main problems that Paramount and David Ellison had with the film, truly is a disaster. I mean, you're going to have to decide for yourself if you want to enter the Shimmer, because I get nervous that you're going to be like, especially for movie money, you're going to be like, I'm more bored than I should be. I got bored, and I, as you can see, I'm geeking out about it a little bit, and I liked a lot of it. So, again, by the end, it seems, you know what is particularly makes it seem like a Black Mirror episode is that it just doesn't have enough story to make up, to constitute a movie, right? It just has like a TV, like 30 to 40 minutes. Well, Black Mirror episodes can run almost feature length, but you know what I'm saying. It just seems smaller, right? More like a, oh, that was interesting, instead of like a, whoa, which should be what happens when you see a movie. But there are, speaking of that reaction, there are a few scenes and surprises that make the movie really stand out and worth seeing at some point. Like on streaming. You will know the scenes when you see them. They are so good. There's two in particular. One, when they get to this like abandoned like habitat where people have lived, where they introduced something but they never really confirmed it, so that was weird. That's not what I'm talking about. You'll know the scene. And then something toward the very end, which was amazing. Again, has to be seen, but you don't have to see it in theaters. And in fact, if this were a better movie, I think these would be awards level scenes. They were that good. So to sum it up, great acting by the women, and not just Portman, across the board. So good. And great female characters for them to portray, great dialogue, incredibly inventive and stunning VFX and production design that is awards worthy. If this film isn't remembered in those categories at next year's awards season, something's wrong, because it's just amazing work. And it's new work. It's like stuff you haven't seen before. So I was blown away in that regard. And again, some scenes and twists that are worth seeing at some point. But on the negative, Alex Garland is more into impressing the audience intellectually than I think entertaining them with thrills and engaging them. And then even emotionally, I think the movie is a little lacking. Also with male characters, really stiff. Like as dynamic as the female characters are, the male characters are like cardboard cutouts. And the acting even doesn't seem particularly good. And Oscar Isaac's a good actor. On that note, there is a scene in the movie where he has some accent. And now that I think about it, I understand why it's there. But it's so jarring and the accent is so poorly done that I can't believe that they let him go through with it. I'd be like, let's do that scene again. But why don't you try a different accent or dial it down a little bit? Because this is a little bit almost, I feel on the verge of like a little making fun of like a middle American Southern accent. And then of course there's that ending, which I thought was very cliche, almost like Species. And so you're like, what? So that's my review of Annihilation. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts down below. Don't spoil it for anyone, though. Put a spoiler warning if you want to talk about something that's a spoiler. But I'm particularly curious to hear how you feel about whether it should be seen on the big screen or on Netflix. Because again, some of you don't have a choice. But as I said, you shouldn't feel bad about it because I actually think that's the best place to watch the movie. So again, you can write your comments down below. And as always, you can check out some more videos right now.